Hi everyone, welcome back to Be Rich. Today I got Shashwat back with me. I'm sure a lot of you are relieved that it's not me and Kesa talking about something philosophical, and we're rather talking of substance today. So do enjoy this video today and give us your feedback in the comments down below. So anyway, that being said, Shashwat, what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to be talking about public pension funds and the problem they're having currently, which is sort of overwhelming them. So, I wanted to talk about it in a US context because in India, we do have a public pension system in the sense that you do get a pension, or people were getting a pension from the government before. That's not really prevalent today because there were some reformations which the Indian government did make. But the public pension fund system in the US is still strong and going strong, and it's still happening. So I decided let's talk about that. But I wanted to talk about it because the problems we were facing in India is very much present in the US, and the strap people are strapped for cash, and returns on pension funds are becoming very difficult to get, and that is the scenario which I want to talk about. So the specific place which I want to talk about was Oregon, and especially the Oregon Pension Fund. So what's ended up happening? So this is how a public pension fund works, where people who work for the state, either the local government or the federal government, are taken in the state of Oregon, are taken care of under the Oregon Pension Fund scheme. And how it works is that there's a equation where it's multiplied by the number of years you've served, and it depends on what your salary is, and then they ask you for a contribution on your salary, and you make this contribution on your salary throughout your career. And at the end of your career, depending on how many years you've served and your final salary at that point, they give you about 6% of your this thing, or how much ever that is. There's a number, and at times, if your final salary is $50,000, they could give you up to $36,000 on in terms of your retirement pension payments which they give you. So that's basically how this works. And if you think about it conceptually, you take a large pool of money from incoming people who are working, and you take money from the guys who were there before, and you make an actuarial calculation to see how much money you need to take from them in order to be able to sustain them in the future later on. And this is how it basically works. And of course, you have the government paying a little bit of the plugging a little bit of the hole. So let's say I only make contributions equivalent to maybe 100 rupees worth of money, which I'll get after my retirement. The government can step, or 80 rupees worth of money, the government steps in and says, okay, I'll plug in the 20 rupee gap, which is at the end of it. This is how state pension funds or public pension funds work. But that's sort of been flipped on its head because as of late, pension funds have been pushed to make further and further promises, take lesser and lesser in terms of contribution, and dole out more sums of money, especially because of inflation. And you have colas, or cost of living adjustments, which are also part of pension funds. So this has become a burgeoning problem for pension funds in the US, and certain statistics say that pension funds only have 71% of the funds which they require in order to be able to make the payments they promised in the long term. So this is like saying, I promise you 100 rupees and tell you that, okay, I'll give you 100 rupees, but right now I only have a 70 rupees. And this is a problem because people are living off of this 100 rupees which I've promised to pay. And if not me not paying that 30 rupees which I owe you is like saying, that's a few families, a few thousand families, where people have one or two people who are the head of the households, who have worked for the state of Oregon, who deserve that compensation which they've been promised, but are unable to get that compensation, and are unable to sustain themselves during retirement. Because the idea with which most employees work is that, okay, I will work for the government tirelessly, and after retirement, what will end up happening is that I'll be taken care of by this entity which I worked for so long. That is the assumption, and that is how the system works. But currently, the system isn't working that way. And what the pension funds have been trying to do to plug this gap is invest in private equity. And that might seem very interesting because why are pension funds, which are supposed to be, averse to risk, and averse to risk and invest in only transparent means, why are they investing in an entity which is debt ridden? Number two, it's opaque. And three, you don't really have a good sense of pricing. So why is a public pension fund, which needs funds in like very safe assets, why is it investing in private equity of all things? And one point is that over the past, let's say, 10 or 15 years with zero interest rates, the returns on bonds and equity has been decent, but bonds hasn't been much, which we talked about in one of our videos, bonds versus equity. And in the US. And this has meant that pension funds have been unable to invest in these funds because they've promised a return. And because of zero interest rates, they've been unable to yield those returns which they were expecting from assets. And that has been a huge problem for these funds. So they've been diversifying into private equity, and only very recently have T-bills started yielding 5% or more. And before this, that this is out of the norm. It's like a pendulum which hasn't swung back the other way in a long, long time. So this is something which pension funds are still coping with, and the Oregon pension fund has invested 23% of their funds in private equity funds. So this is a big problem for them because the guy who talked about Bernie Madoff's there's a guy called Mark who runs an analyst firm who is a mathematician. He analyzed Bernie Madoff's return structure and how much he's investing, and this is the biggest Ponzi scheme in history. And he basically said, "Boss, that's not going to fly. That's a Ponzi scheme." And this was the first guy who was the whistleblower in the Bernie Madoff case. So the same guy had said that I find that pension funds investing in private equity funds is a big mistake, and it's very, very risky, and they're understating their risk by about at least 20%. So they're saying that pension funds, because they don't have to have an estimate of their enterprise value EV, because their EV is calculated not every day like the stock market, but every once in a while. Private equity funds lag behind by 3 months at least. So you don't even know what the hell is going on with your money in private equity funds, and that is giving you fake reductions in volatility. So what is supposed to be a high volatility asset isn't accounting for that because they aren't actually accounting for there's no price transparency in private equity. So he's saying that pension funds should avoid an asset like this, and it's very, very risky, and the people don't know what they're getting their hands into in way of their pension fund managers investing into these private equity funds. But the case for private equity funds is that where the hell are they supposed to get their returns from? So this is a big who's right, who's wrong situation. And I don't really think you can really pinpoint fingers in this case. It's just a very lose situation for everyone, because neither the fund managers under their pressure, and like you've pointed out before, the problem with the political structure is that by the time a guy who gets elected for the state and ends up allocating budgets for pension funds, by the time the payout actually happens, which is corresponding to his period, he's already out of office. So it's the problem of the next guy who's come in. So there's no longevity or continuity in this, and the pension fund manager is stuck between a rock and a hard place. The pensioners have no idea what the hell is going on. They just need to make sure that they have their food security and a roof over their heads after they retire. That's all they want. So this is a big conundrum, and a solution to this may unfold with interest rates being risen, but then private equity funds are folding because of the high interest rates. And an argument being made is that these pension fund managers get about $250 million in terms of management fees, like the managers, and
Correct.
you get $1.1 billion, like the BlackRock guy gets $1.1 million in dividends plus 250 million for doing God knows what. And these pensioners are getting nothing pretty much. What is the system is the question.
Yeah, what you said is very true, and you've said it very well, and you've outlined it. And all that I can say is the intention with what pension fund started with was a very novel and holy intention, like all religions. The
Yeah.
intent was a pure intent. It is to provide some kind of income for factory workers as they carry on with life, because they're sacrificing so much of their life for the factory. And these things have expanded and expanded, become electoral ballot issues year after year in the United States. This is a problem when you have 250 years of democracy. You have these huge white elephants sitting in the room, which nobody wants to talk about, which each term of governors or senates and whatnot come inside. They look at it and say, okay, let the next guy handle it and kick the can and go. The problem right now for Americans is they don't see the looming threat, like you correctly said, because they're printing their own currency. They print and reserve currency. If anything ever happens, God forbid, to that reserve currency of theirs, they'll be in so much trouble overnight. It will not be funny. America as a country will be shaken to its foundation if the reserve currency of the dollar, almighty dollar, is removed from it.
Yeah.
Because only reason the pension funds haven't gone belly up, one reason all this hasn't turned a colossal mess out on the middle of the road is simply the government will raise the debt, print some more dollars, and distribute to everyone who needs it. Little bit is pitchified and given to
Yeah.
each state. Then each state in turn will put some in his pocket and then direct some more, give it to the local counselor, and that guy will take some, put it in his pocket. Finally, some crumbs will land on the guy's plate. And you see it playing out year after year. And it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican. It's the same thing, just a different name, different colors, and each guy blaming the other guy, and each guy coming out with some crazy concocted solution.
There's a funny meme which was passing around recently, which is double it and give it to the next person.
Correct.
So when there's a problem, you don't want to deal with it, you just double it and give it to the next person.
Correct. It's literally like that. It's like sitting and playing on a poker table, and the game never ends because there's unlimited cards, and there is no number you have to reach, and the dealer keeps on dealing cards, and you sit on rotation, and when you get tired, you pass your hand on to the next guy. He takes that whole card and he looks at it and like, oh my god. And most of these secrets, the next guy only gets to know, like Obama did, when he comes and signs and says, okay, become president. Then he gets to open and see the accounts book. Then he's like, oh my god, you guys didn't tell me this is happening here. And quickly close the book and say, okay, what do I do? How do I get out of this? You can't. You're elected now. You're part of the problem. You're no more the solution. And this is true in India too. Our government does the same thing with all the public funds which are there. How are they planning to pay it? They just, debase the rupee and keep on paying things. And this is what happened in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe happened, and even in Germany after World War One, all the factory workers went on strike, and the German government had no option but to print more Deutschmark and pay all these factory workers to get them to work. But suddenly, what happened was all the factory workers who were on strike, got wads and wads of money, sent it into a hyperinflation. A loaf of bread which was costing 20, 30 marks, within a year was costing over trillion marks. People are walking around the streets burning marks because it's cheaper to burn your currency than to buy firewood and burn your stuff. Hey, that happens when you debase your currency beyond a limit. And all these are the huge problems within America, which nobody talks about. Because the reason is they're completely oblivious to it because they are the reserve currency. And the British went through this when they were having their colonies, when they had India to milk. Through 300 years, they were milking India for $43 trillion. For 300 years, they took us for a ride. Jolly ride. They didn't bother about it. They built whatever they wanted. They expanded whatever they wanted. They spent like nobody's business because, money was always coming in. The poor Indians were supplying the currency. And all that changed after 1947, 1950s, when they lost all their colonies one by one and they retreated. And you see the implications of that retreat happening even today. Them leaving the EU, them going through all the mess they're going internally, their politics, everything is from that unbelievable thing that they have been kicked out. Nobody wants them. They thought they were loved, that everybody wanted them. And that kind of the American, tentacles of the hegemony around the world is breaking down the same way. Americans are slowly waking up to the fact, saying, "What? I thought you loved us." Even a country like Japan, who they bailed out after World War II, America was the main reason Japan managed to revive its economy and everything because America propped up Japan out of the fear it was going to be overrun by the Soviets. They propped it up. But now even Japan is like shrugging its shoulder, looking the other side, looking at China as a partner, looking at India as a partner, looking at everybody else as a partner. So this pension fund is a terrible problem. And the only solution I can see it is dismantling it. I know it's painful. And France is going through it. Macron is suffering. The Paris has been on fire for a long extended period of time. Riots in Paris is because of this reason. They wanted to increase the retirement age just by a couple of years. and they had none of it. They said, "No way are you doing this to us. We worked all our time off. Now it's our time to enjoy. Bring the punch bowl out, and we want to sit and enjoy. We don't want to work anymore." But Macron's
No,
like, "Sorry, guys."
and I think that the problem, or rather, the biggest problem with this is that even though pension funds are a way to redistribute income in a certain way, you're still ending up funneling a lot of the money back with pension funds through to private equity funds and then into the pocket of the 1%. So although I want to make it evident that both of us aren't extremely we believe in centrist policy, it's very becoming very difficult to turn your head the other way to the fact that there needs to be higher taxes on the 0.01%, and there needs to be a mechanism to sort of do away with systems like carried interest, which is letting the BlackRock manager be paid
No,
$250 million.
there has to be some methodology to put
Yeah,
your hand back and claw this money back. Let's say the
yeah,
pension fund goes belly up, or it's not performed the way it's performed. You should have an option, legal option, to put your hand back in and claw that money back from them, because it's not going to work. Otherwise, people like our Byju's owner and everybody will be, it all comes finally
yeah.
funding, funnel down. And who's enjoying this? Our Byju's owner sitting here and he's having a good time with it. So you're absolutely right. We do believe in liberal democracy and plural democracy. Everything is true, but but the caveat is this: you cannot have it so lopsided, where
Yeah.
these guys can just get away with whatever they want, and this kind of salaries which are being paid out, these kind of guarantees that are being given, it just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't
and
make sense.
and and it's a very passionate case which they make, which is that we worked our butts off for this government, and we made sure that all of you get your public utilities, and we made sure that you get whatever facilities and amenities which we promised you or the government promised you. But at the end of the day, the bare minimum which was promised to us was to give us a comfortable retirement is now being taken away from us. It's like a dream which is being stolen from us. So I don't it's very difficult to go and wag your finger at them and say, hey, this is wrong. No retirement for you, continue working. It's not something you can tell them,
But
especially
but
when
if
they're working for the state.
but if you're older as the Rocky Mountains in the United States, you'll know this is not a new story. It's been going on and on and on since the dawn of this kind of pension fund creation in the United States. Any form of it, even a small nascent one in a city level, like in San Francisco or you take New York, where it was happening at a very small level, even factory pension, privately held factory pensions. This has been there. A problem has been there. Corruption is rife. Whenever there's a human being involved in
Yeah.
it, it goes
And
sideways.
that's what happened with private pension. So like you said, there were private pension funds, but they completely did away with them and did a something called a 401k matching. So if I
Correct.
put a dollar, then the company will also put a dollar in my name. And they said, I'm not going to guarantee you anything, but I'll definitely match dollar for dollar. Whatever return you get, that's your problem. That's
Correct.
basically what corporates have said. And they've said, we're not getting into this mess again. But sadly, governments aren't in the position to be able to say hands up and let go of this policy, because it's the endowment effect which Richard Taylor has talked about. You can't take
Correct.
away something which you've already given to them,
Correct. And
especially when it costs you votes.
correct. And end of the day, before people don't remember who have not studied history, do not remember how it was before pensions. Because if you didn't have a pension and the population was living hand to mouth, the salary wasn't enough with the inflation and everything. When you lost your job, that was the end of your life pretty much. You lost everything. You know, Very strangely, we opened up for some job interviews here. Some candidates walked in. I just felt very sad to see people who should have retired and have a retirement life at the age of 60, 65. The guy's coming and sitting in front of me and saying, "I'm ready to work." I was like,
Yeah.
wow, what he must have gone through. He finished working, he put his kids through college, and unfortunately, his kids did decide to work. So he's still sitting and, trying to find some kind of work to keep it all going. That's hard, you know.
And
Pension
this
gives some
is
kind of security.
and the only lesson I'd say or takeaway from this is that you guys, people need to take their investments very, very seriously. And the earlier you do it, the better. No, there's no enema, or there's no rather, one thing fixes all. There's no one
No,
shot there's no
no,
golden parachute, and there's no
no.
panacea, nothing. So this is something which you guys have to take very seriously. That being said, the promising or the bright side of it is when you do take it seriously, it's very doable to have a retirement. And the earlier you start, the easier it is. You can look at our multiple other videos where we made the calculation in like live in the recording studio. So, I
True.
mean, yeah, there's no excuse not to invest.
That's why in India, most people don't rely on the government because we know how the government is. Though you're supposed to have PF and whatnot here, most even people who are even working within the government work overtime to make sure they invest. They look at having their own private insurance. They don't rely on anybody to give them a parachute. So for most Indians, when they hear about all these things, it sounds like it's a first world
Greek and
problem.
Latin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like first you're so privileged. You have pension. Wow, you mean government gives you money for nothing? Wow. And here we are sitting like, really? In India, we don't get anything. We pay tax, but we don't know what we get for that. We just pay. Whatever the government says, most of the time, they just take it from us. They don't even ask us. Well, anyway, that's an interesting conversation for another day, I guess. How Indian
Yeah.
tax system is and what we get for our taxes. Anyway, anything more you want to add, Shashwat?
No, that's pretty much it.
Anyway, your fans down in the comments have been screaming for you, so try to make a few more appearances next week, hopefully. If
Yeah.
you do get some time between your classes, do drop in, talk to us. They would like to talk about specific companies in America. If you have anything which is
Sure.
of interest to you, yeah.
Yeah.
So that will make your fans happy, and
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
I'd
sure
love to come down to the studio and record in person. And I know a lot of people don't really enjoy the Zoom setting or the StreamYard setting, but this is what we can do for now.
you'll be strangely surprised. Number of people who are getting nostalgic for COVID days. They're like, looks
Yeah.
like one of those COVID meetings, Zoom meetings. And I was like, wow, already it's become a classic.
Yeah.
Your generation's moving fast. Anyway, that being said,
Not wrong about that.
thank you for joining us today on Be Rich. Hope you do like this content and you found it informative and entertaining as always. Do turn on the bell notification icon and be in the lookout for our next video, which should be coming soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
On 26th August, we are doing an event in Bangalore, Whitefield. Those desirous of meeting me in that event can contact the WhatsApp number or the email given below. My team will give you the details. Thank you once again for supporting Be Rich. It's a great privilege and honor that so many of you in thousands have subscribed to my channel and have supported me. I have written 2 books in English, The Alchemy of Money and Ordinary Stocks, Extraordinary Profits. These books are published by us and are ready. If you want to procure a copy, send us a message to the WhatsApp number given below and my team would respond to you. If you want an Amazon Kindle copy, you can click the link below. Finally, those who wish to consult with me can send a mail to berichenglish@gmail.com. Once again, I thank you for your support. If you like this video, press the subscribe button of my channel, hit the like button and turn on the bell notification.